What's happening, everybody? Trey here, joined by my dad, Sean, and today reactions to the classics. It is time for another episode of our Tom Waits discography reviews, and today we are up to his 2002 release, Alice, right here. I want to shout out our longtime friend, patron, and Waits fan of the channel, John, for requesting this one for us to dive into today. And man, a lot of interesting stories to talk about. Would you expect anything different with Mr. Waits? And if you want to check out any of our other reviews, there will be a Waits playlist in the description where you can, kind of cherry pick through that. Though I would say they're all worth checking out.
They are. Oh yeah, no, we've run almost all his albums. So some quick facts before we jump into the album. 14th studio album released in 2002 on Epitaph Records under the Anti-Sub label and on the same day as Blood Money. 26 in Australia, 3 in Norway, 5 in Italy, 20 in the UK, 33 in the US. So Tom was still touching different areas of the world. Now, I learned a lot of stuff on this album just about Alice in Wonderland and Lewis Carroll, but Alice was initially created for an avant-garde opera directed by Robert Wilson, whom Waits had previously worked with on the play The Black Rider, and for Hamburg's Thalia Theater in the winter of 1992, so way before this. It also marks Tom and Kathleen Brennan's second collaboration with Wilson. It's loosely based on Lewis Carroll's obsession with Alice Liddell, the neighborhood girl who served as the inspiration for Alice's adventures in Wonderland, weaving together instruments such as bass, saxophones, vibraphone, pump organ, French horns, and a string of bass, violin, and not even a normal violin, I'll get into that in a little bit, and a cello, is the same sense of enchantment as its namesake. Now, Trey, could you tell us a little bit about Mr. Lewis Carroll?
Yeah, so it was the Alice, it was based on the relationship between Charles Dodgson, who is Lewis Carroll, right, and Alice Liddell, who you alluded to earlier, the neighbor girl who was his inspiration for Alice's adventures in Wonderland. The songs Waits wrote are a mix of declarations of doomed love, observations of a fallen world, and pieces describing freaks and deformed people.
Oh, yeah.
He actually lost his initial kind of demos and recordings of this at the play's premiere. His car was broken into in 1992, and a CD of demos was stolen and widely bootlegged. Supposedly, he had to buy a copy himself years later to rework them for the final album. So imagine this, Dad. You're Waits, you're going to the play's premiere, you come out, and boom, my demo CD of all this stuff that I'm working on is now gone. So I got to rebuy that years later to kind of jog my memory.
Yeah, I got to listen to it to record it myself. It's crazy stuff. So one thing I didn't put in that, Trey, is that Alice Liddell was 10 years old.
Yeah.
And that just ogs this whole thing up, to use a real fancy word. It's just bad.
I did not know that in the backstory.
I did not know it either. And I'm like, wait, what? The instrumentation that I mentioned is different because they utilize a small chamber orchestra. It just has a different sound. The violins are Stroh violins, instruments outfitted with a metal horn on the end for amplification purposes. Marimbas, piano, organ, woodwinds, and reeds, in the complete absence of guitars, which is not exactly true. They do appear a little bit on a couple songs, but Waits recalled of Alice in a statement, and if you know Waits, he does not do many interviews, but he did do some stuff for this album. I think probably because there was a play involved in trying to promo it. During the 70s, too many of my songs were drowning in strings. I didn't want to hear another blasted violin. So we found string players who felt the same way about their instrument, formed an odd skeletal chamber orchestra, and tried to avoid all the familiar phrases where strings love to play. It's ranked 2 in Metacritic's top 30 albums of 2002 with a score of 90 out of 100. NME out of 10, Pitchfork 9 out of 10. In 2006, it was awarded a diamond certification from the Independent Music Companies Association. Sales of at least 250,000 throughout Europe. Sold about 160,000 US. Pretty good for Tom. He never sold a lot of records. All tracks written by Tom and, of course, Kathleen Brennan. Tom did say something else all the way in 2002 to Stereogum about their songwriting collaboration.
Yeah, he said, quote, when it comes to ideas, what you should do here and what you should do there, she knows a lot, and she's the only one of us who knows how to read music. He didn't even seem to think he could write without her if he tried. Again, Tom said, quote, when it comes to who does what, we kind of throw it all in the pot, I guess. But when you locate certain things in the music, whether it's the meadow or a cruise ship or the dive or the rapture or the clouds or whatever it is, something that you kind of share evenly, Alice and Blood Money are kind of like twins, or like Cain and Abel a bit. And we wrote and recorded them together and endured the arduous process of recording these things, which is a long process.
Yeah, so Blood Money is a totally different thing, and I won't go into that. Maybe someday we'll do a review of that as well. I included that in there with Kathleen because I think my natural reaction, it was when Kathleen started writing songs, I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Is this a Yoko situation? The wife comes in. But I read some interviews he did during this time. I read a lot of research on this album. Don't worry, I'm not going to share it all with you. But he did an interview with a guy who's a pretty prominent music guy. And the guy said he was nervous to interview Tom because no one ever interviews Tom. And he said when he was interviewing him, he'd ask him a question, and Tom would just come up with like some weird fact about some strange animal in Africa and wouldn't answer any of the questions. But he said it was like went on for an hour. The next day, though, Tom called him back and said, hey, I wanted to make sure you understood that Kathleen is a great songwriter and very, very important to this creative process. So I thought since Tom thought that was so important, I put that in. But I thought the story just made me laugh. I'm like, that sounds about right.
Starting with the proper track by track review, Dad, we start with the only single and the title track here and the opener. So kind of hit the trifecta here with Alice. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, I thought it was really good. The trumpet's the prominent instrument, which was kind of odd, not what you expect. I mean, there's other stuff in it. Fits well as Tom gives a good vocal performance, like one of his best on this album. There's 3 songs I think he gives just outstanding vocal performance. Telling of the it's that part of it when you read the lyrics, it's like, okay, perverse fascination that Lewis Carroll had for Alice. I mean, let's be honest, right? If this if this book came out now, like this dude would get canceled. Like this would be, but it's
the darker backstory, right?
But I thought it fit this. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought the soft horn instrumentation mixed with the piano quite well. Gave a bit of a mellow sound, but that's accentuated by Tom's thoughtful vocal right here. The metaphor of falling through the ice of Alice was striking, and the imagery and heartache that Waits is so good at describing is really on display right here. And that takes us to our next track, Everything You Can Think. Dad, we have 15 songs here, 48 minutes, so pretty well-paced record.
Yeah, it cruises, man. It cruises. This one starts with a train, which Tom's done at different times. Tom is in his full gruff voice. I mean, it goes from the beauty of Alice to like, here he is. This is Tom.
The 2 sides, right?
The 2 sides. Every verse starts out with everything you can think of is true. Not sure how it fits totally in the overall narrative of the album. He plays the vibraphone, so the arrangement is somewhat ominous. It works with the gruffness of his voice.
Yeah, and speaking of that gruff delivery, I mean, I was getting flashbacks to Hell Broke Loose.
That's a good call.
In particular, in his catalog, a bit of an unsettling and a darkly enchanting song.
Good.
I think it kind of fits with the overall like play theater type of vibe pretty well. And then we shift gears to Flower's Grave right here, where we touch on those strings that we alluded to earlier, Dad, in the quick facts. Because that goes well with some very poetic imagery that kind of draws on the flower metaphor. Quote, as one rose blooms, then another will die. It's always been that way, and ain't that the truth? I think the strings here are a highlight.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what I have, a beautiful arrangement with the strings. Tom on piano and pump organ, and a very good vocal performance. I think a part of it, too, he's talking about dying one day. I think you made a point in the last song that's important that we punctuate, is that this was written for a play.
Yeah.
So, that's written with that in mind, and now we're listening to it without the visual. So sometimes,
just like the Black Rider.
Yeah, just like the Black Rider. We mentioned it in that one as well. Now we move on to the next track. No One Knows I'm Gone. And I took this one, Trey, because I'm going to have you do the next one. He's singing from his grave, right? Only Tom can do. Like, Tom Waits is one of the greatest writers in music history.
Oh, I'd agree.
And an underrated guy along with Nick Cave and Leonard Cohen. Those 3 never got like huge success, and they're every bit on the par with some of the other. They're not Dylan, okay? Nobody's Dylan, but I hear Paul Simon. Right? Well, these guys are every bit as good as Paul is, probably better. But anyway, he's singing from the grave. Vocal performance not too bad, although he's singing in a very low register, and he does this in several songs. He's not being gruff, but he drops the register way down. It's only 1:40, but it works.
Yeah, and it kind of continues that using nature to describe life and death, just like we had on Flower's Grave. It's shortened to the point. I thought it was a solid track as we move now. And
how's your German? Right?
The beauty that you left for me, the Kami Nezupat. We'll go with that.
I'll accept it.
And that means don't you ever be late. Okay, so we'll just stick with my English right there. It's a bit of a trip of a song, almost a bit of a twisted waltz
Yes.
type vibe mixed with cabaret, which kind of pops up a lot, sonically on this record as well. Bass clarinet is a highlight, and the sax add to the almost madman
Yeah,
type
it's
delivery
crazy.
we have from Tom right here.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. I don't think I got much. Almost all the song is sung in German,
Yeah.
and I just put Tom is very into it. Be on time, don't be late. That's all you got to remember in life.
100%.
All right, we're cruising along. The 6th track, Poor Edward. Now, these next 2 tracks are just Tom Waits personified.
Oh, yeah.
I dug deep into this in the New York. Yeah, man, I dug into it too. Poor Edward's about Edward Mordrake, who had a face on the back of his head. Crazy story. He committed suicide at the age of 23. Now, I'm sure, Trey, on this, we're going to put a picture up there so you can see. Like in some parts, it's like it's a fable. Other parts, no, this guy. I think this was a real guy. He appears in some medical journeys back then.
Back in like the late 1800s.
Yeah, that doesn't mean a medical journal from the late 1800s is right, but he pretty much tells this guy's story right down the line. Another one he sang in the lower registry. The strings add the correct mood to the story.
Yeah, man, this is one where I was just really engaged with Tom, as I often am, right? I was hanging on his every word right here, and definitely has that melancholic tone with the strings added in there. You have the line, I say, she drove him to suicide and took poor Edward to hell, talking about
because if you see it, like it's a small face on the back of his head, and it was said that when he was crying, it would be sneering and laughing.
So
and then it would constantly make noise but not speak when he was trying to sleep, so he couldn't say. Yeah.
If I would have anyone write a song about that, it would be Waits.
Yeah, I'm how did you find this, dude? Yeah, exactly.
And as you alluded to earlier, this is kind of a 1-2 punch as we go now to Tabletop Joe. Another story based around somebody. This time we have Johnny Eck, aka the Half Boy, who I'll put a photo up as well. It was a freak show and circus performer, also a musician, a photographer, and a painter. So hey, shout out to old Tabletop Joe here, who didn't let his disability hold him back.
Yeah, he was born with a truncated torso, suffering from caudal regression syndrome. It doesn't make fun of him. Like Tom's not going to do that, but it's humorous because Tabletop Joe looked at his stuff in a humorous way.
Yeah.
One part's about him playing the piano. He had a really strong left hand, but he couldn't reach the pedals, man. But like I say, it's not done in like a bad way. Piano's really good. Horns going in kind of like a jazz arrangement. Tom's a little rough on it, but it kind of needs to be on this. He's kind of telling you that story, but it's not his full mode. Just right for the subject matter. And this appeared in what? We did a song battle with this.
Yeah, because I was already familiar with it.
Yeah, we did a song battle or something.
And but listening to it in context of the record, it really fits because we're 7 songs in, about halfway through the record, and it is an odd type of record.
It definitely is an odd type of record.
Both in and even just a little twisted in a sense, just in the musical arrangement, and this song keeps that going. Really, that Tabletop Joe, like the way that Waits really
only Tom could sing
accentuates that. I think that it gives me kind of a black and white throwback type of image in my head. So now we are going to track number 8, Lost in the Harbor right here. This is another solid song that again has melancholic undertones, describing people and situations where they're down on their luck, missing what's really needed. Very emotive and moving, and culminates a really good, I think, 3-strong run with the poor Edward, Tabletop Joe in this. Yeah,
and a pump organ's the main instrument. Trey, I have a feeling the next time you see a pump organ will be the first time you've seen a pump organ. Not really used a lot, especially nowadays. A song about what is wanted and needed, but also followed by how that isn't available. He just runs it through. So a sad song. Now we're already up to track number 9. We're All Mad Here. It's a very ominous song, Trey. It kind of fits in with some earlier tracks describing decomposing in hell. Strings and percussion do a great job of setting the tone. And it's going to kind of get us back into this Carol and Alice story.
Yeah, revisits that. Not really a standout for me on this record, but it again leans into that kind of dark cabaret type of sound that appears a lot on this record.
I see on our notes, we got the same notes on this next one. This is great.
Oh, yeah. Watch her disappear. Oh, yeah. I noticed that now, which vocal delivery very akin to...
What's he building?
What's he building? Yeah, I wrote that down on mine too, so that's funny.
Gets that speak kind of go, kind of ominous, like.
Ooh, okay. And the opening line in here is pretty wonderful as well, where Tom notes, "Last night I dreamed that I was dreaming of you. So in his dream, he's still dreaming about dreaming of her, right? That's infatuation right there. Again, quite a haunting and poetic tune.
Well, and it paints the picture of him watching this girl and
Yeah.
everything in the environment as he is. Like basically, he can never have her. So this is one of those that really borders on
Yeah.
for Lewis, man.
Yeah, for sure. And now we're going to the Reaperbahn as our track
Pushing
number.
into our German.
Yeah, that's right here. We have the quote: "The memories are short, but the tales are long." Kind of allusions in here, talking about the Germany red light
Because
district.
it's a real place. It's a street in Hamburg.
Yeah, fitting the tale of in the first verse, this girl's broken dreams. Then we talk about another guy who's in a gay relationship, and just this Reaperbahn. It's almost like a place where these outcasts of society end up going.
Yeah, it's nicknamed in Germany the most sinful mile.
Mm.
So he tells the story of a couple of people. Songwriting is classic Bizarre Tom in all the best ways.
Oh, 100%, man. And again, that kind of we've noted a lot, right? A little bit dark, a little bit seedy.
Yeah,
just
seedy's good.
Just thematically in this album here. And now we go to a short and sweet tune. I'm Still Here.
Yeah, it's only a minute 49. Piano driven. Tom sounds really good. Sad song, and she hasn't looked that way at him in years, but he's still here, right? We've been together forever, and it kind of just fades out.
Mhm.
Really good. Waite said this song is what he imagines what the real girl Lewis Carroll based his character Alice on would say in a speech years after everyone, including Carroll, has forgotten her.
Yeah, man. And with that, we have the quote: "You haven't looked at me that way in years, but I'm still here," from the perspective of Alice herself, right there. So yeah, I mean, it made the most use of its time, I think. And we go now to Fish and Bird. A wonderful track here, y'all, detailing a sailor loving his woman, even though they will and have been apart, right? Living in his heart is all that can happen. And at the end of the day, he chooses to accept that.
Yeah, and this is another one where we went back to that real low registry, not gruffness, but baritone sax and pump organ, which lends to that. The overall narrative is a love, as you said, that can never be. A sailor telling stories, but that's where you get the name. I just want to, you talked about the sailor going, the first verse is about a fish, which is a whale, and a bird that fell in love. They're looking at each other in the water, but they know they can never be. I would say it's probably maybe a play on Carroll's forbidden love for
See,
Alice.
I hadn't thought of that, but
I don't know. I might be wrong.
That would make sense, though. 100%, Dad. Yeah, I'm gonna have to re-listen to that.
No,
song
just
now
enjoy the song and don't put that ooginess on it, man.
But we have 2 songs left and one more proper with the lyrics, and that is Carol right here. Hopefully I didn't butcher that too much. But again, this one showcases some really poetic lyricism, ends with a couplet quote, "And the branches spell Alice, and I belong to you." Another solid offering, kind of wrapping up the theme of this record.
Yeah, once again, he's in his low registry. Melancholy song, nice brass solo. It does talk about a doll in his pocket, so it's kind of strange. I went through those lyrics several times, but that's going to take us to our last track, which probably fits in more with the play.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun. It's an instrumental. It's fine. I don't really have a lot to say about it. It's a minute 43, but I think it probably fits in with the play, and it had to be in there at some point. So what do you got, Trey? What do you got for your favorites?
Yeah, moving to our favorites now. I'm going to go with Flowers Grave, Poor Edward, and then Fish and Bird, as I just have to limit myself to 3 right here. Those are the ones that stood above the rest.
Well, I limited myself to 4. One of them's yours, though, too, Flowers Grave. Then I got Alice, the opener. Watch Her Disappear, just because, man, I mean, it's not something you're going to spin and sing along to. And then I'm Still Here, I thought was great. So now we're going to get to our overall score. A definite, and you can say this about a lot of times, Alice, but unlike any Waite's album I've ever heard, it's definitely his least rock album, filled with melancholy, loneliness. Because of subject matter, it's written for a play, some jazz stuff in here, some old waltzes, all kinds of stuff. Obviously theatrical love songs.
100%.
I thought it was really, really done. A lot of people call it his lost masterpiece. I wouldn't go that far because he's got some masterpieces I think that you and I would agree on. But I'm going to be at an 8.0 on this. I think it's it's way late in Tom's career, and he's still banging it out. And like I said, his writing is tremendous.
Yeah, I think, that was one of the strengths of it. It's just a really strong, tight project, I think, overall. Again, as I noted, leaning heavily into that kind of cabaret musical style, some very poetic and metaphoric lyricism that leans into the heartbreak and kind of outcast of the world. Not a top-tier Waits record, maybe, but
Right.
it's still really,
I
really
agree.
good, right? And so I appreciated the thematic continuity of the record as well. I'm going to be around 7.5, 7.75
Okay.
for me.
It's fair.
At this point in time, and you know, another just unique type of record in Waits' long and
You got
lengthy
that right.
catalog. That's the thing I like about Tom too. You never quite know what you're going to get.
No, you
record to
don't.
record.
No, you have no idea.
And, you know, he's able to still display such creativity, even so many you know, years down the line. So thanks again to John for
Definitely.
requesting this one. Let us know down in the comments below what you think of Alice. What are your favorite tracks? And if you've seen the play, let us know that
sure.
as well. And do you like it or Blood Money more? You know, it kind of interesting. Dad released the same exact day. It's happened, you know, a few times, notably in music history, but it doesn't happen too frequently.
It doesn't happen often. And should we cancel Lewis Carroll?
That's right.
I don't know, man.
With this new info that was brought to our attention right here. But yeah, man, another cool little journey here in the Waits journey for sure. So again, make sure to hit that big red subscribe button if you like what you saw. Give it a thumbs up, and we always appreciate sharing in various Facebook groups, Reddit, or whatever too to get the word out. But that'll wrap it up from us today. So until next time, thanks for watching, happy listening, and we will see you.